Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Reading's in-person and virtual Sunday worship service. My name is Al Murray. I'm a member of the worship arts team and the tech team and the reopening team and a few other. We all wear multiple hats here. We know that. My pronouns are he, him, his. Today, we gather in an understanding and welcoming environment where we nurture and explore individual spirituality, work to build a committed and loving community, and to help heal our fragile community and world. Whoever you are, wherever you are from, whoever you love, whatever your faith tradition, you are welcome here. If this is your first time with us, I would like to extend a special welcome to you. If you haven't already, please look at our webpage for information about UUCR. There you can find details about our church community, sign up for the weekly newsletter, and find the contact information for Melissa Martin, our member services coordinator, who can answer any of your questions. Our Share the Plate tradition started more than 2.5 years ago as a spiritual practice of giving half of each Sunday's collection to nonprofit organizations that share our Unitarian Universalist values. We do this not because we have more than we need, but because there is so much need, and this is a simple yet powerful way for each of us to live out our mission's commitment to heal the world by learning about and supporting the good works of charitable organizations and becoming more involved in our community. The physical collection will be later in the service, but I want to take a moment to tell you about our Share the Plate recipient for the month of August, Unitarian Universalist Ministry for Earth. UU Ministry for Earth works with congregations and individuals to help them act together to address environmental justice and the climate crisis. UUMFE provides the tools and develops the coalitions necessary for Unitarian Universalists and others to take bold, faith-based action for environmental justice. On behalf of all the staff and volunteers involved in today's worship, I want to thank you for being with us this morning physically and virtually. We believe that you belong here. We believe that you belong here, maybe just for the next hour, although we hope for longer. You belong here, and we give thanks that you are joining us today.
Good morning. I'm Katie McQuaige-Lucas, and I am your ministerial intern and your summer worship coordinator, and my pronouns are she and hers. Let us begin our time together this morning with the words of British Unitarian minister Leonard Mason. We affirm the unfailing renewal of life. Rising from the earth and reaching for the sun, all living things shall fulfill themselves. We affirm the steady growth of human companionship. Rising from ancient cradles and reaching for the stars, people the world over shall seek the ways of understanding. We affirm a continuing hope that out of every tragedy, the spirits of individuals shall rise to build a better world. And let us join together this morning in lighting our chalice. The words are in your order of service. Al, will you come light the chalice for me? I don't think I remembered the... Are you helping? Excellent. In the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, we gather this day. May the flame we now kindle be to us a symbol of the holiness we seek. And do you want to get out in front to do the affirmation so people can see your hands? Excellent. Universalists, the church of the open mind, the loving heart, and helping hands. Thank you so much. And now our opening hymn is The Morning Hangs a Signal. If you like sheet music, it is number 40, but the lyrics are in the order of service for you. Please take whatever position enables you to sing out loud and proud, be that sitting or standing, whatever makes you most comfortable. Please join in our opening hymn.
The morning hangs a signal upon the mountain crest, while all the sleeping valleys in silent darkness rest. From peak to peak it flashes, it laps along the sky, till glory of the sunlight on all the lands alive. Above the generations, the lonely prophets rise, while truth burns as the day star within their glowing eyes. And other eyes beholding are kindled from that flame, and dawn becomes the morning when prophets of proclaim. The soul has lifted moments above the different days, when life's great meaning breaketh in sunrise on our ways. Behold the radiant dawn, and the faith above all fear. Light shall release its splendor, that morning shall appear.
Our responsive reading today is number 565 in the Gray Hymnal. It's also in the order of service. Always it is easier to pay homage to prophets than to heed the direction of their vision. It is easier to venerate the saints than to learn the human quality of their sainthood. It is easier to glorify the heroes than to give weight to their examples. To worship the wise is much easier than to profit by their wisdom. Great leaders are honored, not by adulation, but by sharing their insights and values. Grandchildren of those who stoned the prophet sometimes gather up the stone to build the prophet's monuments. Always it is easier to pay homage to prophets than to heed the direction of their vision.
Please join me in a moment of contemplation as I light our candles of community and the candles for peace in Ukraine. And now please join me in prayer. Spirit of life and love, ever present, ever creating, bringing forth new life in the face of stagnation and sorrow, move through and among us this morning. Today we remember that 1 year ago, Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, ending our war, but leaving Afghanistan less safe, less stable. We also hold in our hearts today the people of Ukraine, of South Sudan, of Myanmar, of Somalia, of Syria, and so many other places wounded by conflict. We pray this morning for peace in our homes, peace in our communities, peace within all countries, peace across borders. We gather together this morning with longing and anticipation. We bring fears and hopes, anxieties and dreams. Spirit of healing, where there is sorrow, bring comfort. Where there is fear, bring courage. Where there is pain, bring ease. Where there is disconnection, bring connection. Where there is joy or gladness or delight, we rejoice. Let it expand among us and to all people. Spirit of resistance, shape us into peacemakers, instruments of justice and bearers of hope and love in a world that needs peace, justice, hope, and love. Renew our spirits so that we may expand life, becoming co-creators in a more loving and just universe. Help us to remember always that we carry within us all that we need to be whole and all that we need to carry out our callings in this world. Amen, and may it be so.
Our reading this morning is There Is No Easier Way by the Reverend Elizabeth Nguyen. I once saw a little sign carved in wood that read, "There is only the hard way." Many of us have been harmed by theology that told us that suffering was a sacrifice that would bring us closer to God. Many of us were told that our suffering would redeem us, even when we knew that actual redemption would have been to be free from the suffering to begin with. Many of us are only here because of the sacrifices of others. So much of what is possible to carve out in this world requires some giving up, some letting go, some sacrifice. That is the truth of that little wooden sign. There is no easy way. There was only the hard way. In particular, the work of justice often asks us to do impossible, hard, terrifying things. There is no easier way. There is only this one hard way. Folks with more privilege sometimes get caught up here. If it's hard, maybe we're doing it wrong, we tell ourselves. We are lulled by our experiences of choosing between a hard choice and an easier one. Folks with less privilege know that many of our choices are between a horrific choice and a horrific choice. We learn to live with that and keep going. Many of us want to do the right thing, the just thing, the generous thing, and also to not have to give anything at all. We want to share our opinions, but not actually donate our evenings, our weekends, our doing dishes while on the conference line to get to understand the work enough to be able to offer meaningful thoughts. We want people to trust us and let us shape the vision, but not actually risk inviting folks out to tea, dinner, beers, or church to build a relationship that endures and carries us forward. We may want to post the cute meme without actually making the phone call to the city councilor or state representative. We want to be part of that powerful, courageous, game-changing direct action without the long past midnight planning meetings, the messy decision-making, the frayed relationships, and the constant wondering if this is even worth it. We want to talk about being bound together in interdependence, but do not actually want to give our guest room to a stranger, give a paycheck to someone we've never met, or turn our schedule inside out to do what needs to be done. The word sacrifice might be too much mess for some of us, too tainted by oppression and coercion. What matters more is that we are willing to give our lives in the shape of what is being asked, not hope that what we are asked to do will fit the shape of our lives.
Before I begin, I would like to say that this is one of those Sundays, and they happen pretty often, where after the musical meditation, I wonder what exactly the point is of me preaching, because I think we all just got church, and I don't know if we need more, but you're going to get more. So thank you, Trevor. So one of the critiques our forebears had of the religion of their day, particularly the Universalists, was the insistence on looking beyond this life for hope and for salvation. Now, they said, salvation is here and it is now. And so our own Universalists, as well as the Christians of the social gospel movement, and a wide variety of other religious visionaries, sought to create justice in this life, to bring about a heaven on earth. And obviously, they did not succeed in their lifetimes, but there have been big wins, especially around improving the material conditions of most of the people in this country. I think it's difficult for many of us today to imagine the grinding poverty of the 19th and early 20th centuries, and that was for a time vanquished. But I do think that people working multiple minimum wage jobs to afford a tiny closet in this very expensive place that we live know all too well how fragile that victory was. Another major victory of these movements was in suffrage, expanding voting rights ever outward in this country with greater and greater protections. And that too is being dismantled. Our humanist forebears in the early 20th century believed that history was a narrative of inevitable progress. And I think we have learned that the arc of the universe bends because we are the ones who bend it, and there's nothing inevitable about it. Many of the great movements for justice originated in religious communities. Abolition, women's rights, the civil rights movement, so many of these actions grew from the faith of the activists. Not a faith that demanded suffering now for hope in some unknown afterlife, but a faith that demanded hope right now and the possibility of working for a better world right now. In the English language, the way we use hope, we often imply a positive outcome. That outcome might not be certain, but it will be good. The certain version would be optimism, the conviction that yes, all will turn out well, and the good thing is right around the corner. Miguel de la Torre is a Latinx theologian, and he has called for a theology of hopelessness. And he's using the word hope the way I would use optimism, to imply that kind of blind certainty. And in Spanish, esperar is a little more ambiguous. It implies expectation without the conviction of a positive outcome. It's simply watchful waiting, anticipation of something. So for de la Torre, the alternative to hope would be despair, and he wants to find a place in the middle, a place that is not waiting or doing nothing, but is a place of action. No more waiting for a future to come to us, no living in a state of expectation, but action now. And there's an element of acceptance here, of being willing to see what is right in front of us and resist denial and grapple with it. I think one of the problems for me, and possibly for most of you, is the assumption that my actions will yield immediate and visible results. And believing that we have control over outcomes can so easily turn into that kind of optimism and certainty. And that kind of certainty is easily broken. Sharon Welch, a white feminist ethicist, calls this an ethic of control. And she says that this ethic of control is too fragile to face the world as it is. And she calls us instead to an ethic of risk, of being willing to engage with the world without certainty, without control, to push beyond our comfort zones and beyond our expectations into a place that does not have security or action plans or mile markers or certainty. And both de la Torre and Welch are writing to afflict the comfortable, and they're pointing out that people who have been marginalized have never had the luxuries of control or optimism or certainty. They both remind their respective audiences how much there is to learn about challenging despair and resisting numbness, about how to find a place of action based in that resistance and pointing to a better way. And it seems to me that this is the only way we can live in the tension between a utopian vision and the work that is directly in front of us. Because so often the immediate work is disappointing. Legislation will get watered down. Reforms will be stifled or not quite do all that they set out to do. Movements will fade away. Institutions will crumble. And there are as many ways for us to be disappointed in the work of justice as there are ways to do the work in the first place. In the face of this challenge, That's when the social gospel movement began to decline in the early 20th century. And some historians of religion point to the horrors of the First World War or the Great Depression as these great tragic moments of history that utterly demolished the optimism of the prior progressive era. And certainly after the Second World War, theologians and ethicists such as Reinhold Niebuhr called for a new realism, no utopian vision. And so while these movements, these progressive religious movements, never totally disappeared, it certainly faded from prominence in the national discourse and the national politics. And to some extent, this new realism, yes, there's an acceptance of reality, but it's also a form of despair, of believing that the world could not be different from the thing we have accepted it to be. And I think this is when I must remember that hope does not have to be waiting or patient expectation. I don't have to wait for the better thing to come along. Hope can instead be the thing that takes our reaction to injustice and oppression and transforms it into action. Hope can be the fuel that propels us. Not with an attachment to outcome, because we cannot truly know what will become of our engagement with the world, but there can be an openness to possibility. Hope can be a desire, and it can also be a practice and not just an idle dream. The title of today's service comes from Mariame Kaba, and she tweets about prison and policing abolition. The quote on the front reminds us that hope is a discipline, but she also once tweeted, "Let this radicalize you rather than lead you to despair." And it says something about the world that I actually have no memory of what event she was responding to when she said that. But it reminds me to respond to the world not by flinching away from pain, but by moving deeper into the world, by going beyond what is, by going beyond the small dreams, the little dreams that can be brought into being immediately. It reminds me to respond to the world with action that reaches for more, for dramatic change, for a change that goes beyond what is immediate. And it's difficult to do that without attachment. But a Buddhist teacher once told me, "How can I see the world as it is and not be moved to action?" Unattachment doesn't mean doing nothing. Unattachment means letting go of whatever holds me back from doing what I know to be right. The society we live in today does not necessarily call us to this kind of active dreaming and visioning. The world we actually live in, it calls us differently depending on how we live. It may push us to complacency or indifference. It may prompt despair. The world as it is attempts to preserve itself, to forever extend the status quo. The world as it is tells us that we are small, that we have no power, or if we do have power, that we must carefully preserve it lest we lose it. And so we need a place to remember that even though we are small as individuals, we are large as a gathering of many. And we need a place to imagine what could be different. We need a place to remind us that we are not alone, and that we ourselves can be more, and that we can demand more from this world. We need places that are dedicated to active dreaming, so that when we face opposition, we are able to resist. So that when we face failure, we are able to get back up again. We human beings need a place to remind us that risk is worthwhile, that dreams are worth struggling for, and that we are called to action. And a large part of being in religious community is doing that dreaming together. There's a reason so many justice movements came out of religious communities. How many places do we have today to name our dreams and to share them to build visions of what might be? How many places are there that simultaneously demand we see the world as it truly is and that we imagine something more? To live in the world so that it moves us rather than numbing us is to live in the world as active participants, to not close ourselves off. These things, they're upheld by our shared dream. This way of life is fueled by hope, an active hope, one that does not allow us to step back or excuse ourselves, but one that calls us into deeper engagement with the world and into a deeper commitment to build this world into something more.
Our congregation exists and thrives through the gifts of those who call this place their spiritual home. If you are here with us in the sanctuary, you may put your gift in the collection plate as it goes by. Otherwise, you may make out a gift online or send a check. Please give as generously as you are willing and able to share the plate offering to support the UU Ministry for Earth and the mission of UUCR. If this is your first time with us, and if you are in our sanctuary here with us, please let the plate pass you by. Your gift here is present enough. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Melissa Martin, your Member Services and Volunteer Coordinator and your Interim Congregational Administrator. My pronouns are she and her. This summer, our worship has been especially fulfilling here in our air-conditioned fellowship hall under the caring leadership of Katie McQuaige Lucas. It's my pleasure to share a few moments with you during this time of our service that we call our congregational life. It is here where we invite you to expand on the messages and the connections you experience here in worship with the many opportunities that exist in this, our UCR community. I invite you to take a look at our weekly update newsletter from this past Thursday. In it, you'll find lots of information, including a message from our new contract minister, Reverend Dr. Laura Solomon, where she invites us to get to know her better and provides us an opportunity for her to know each of you better too. Since the start of 2020, we have primarily used our names displayed on Zoom to make getting to know one another more easily possible. In this week's newsletter, you'll find an opportunity to request your updated physical name tag so that it is ready for our upcoming in-gathering on September 11th for all who will participate in in-person events. As you may know, UCR is a welcoming congregation where we invite everyone to wear name tags for our services and events, allowing for us to call one another by name and to get to know one another better. So I ask that you request your updated name tag so that we can begin this new church year with our customized name tags, ones that meet our accessibility and inclusion ministry goals. Congregants who have had a name tag with us in the past are welcome to keep their existing name tag holder with a new personalized insert. Please let me know if you have any questions or preferences for your name tag. Please also share your pronouns so that they might appear under your name on your name tag. Sharing our pronouns helps to create an atmosphere of inclusivity and respect so that you can know everyone more fully. You can learn more about pronoun use in our newsletter. Also in our news this week are messages for lay leaders, a reminder about requesting your meeting space or your Zoom room for this new year, a reminder that our September newsletter deadline is tomorrow at 5 p.m., and some save the date information for our Connections Fair and our first program council meeting. Speaking of save the dates, our Kris Kringle Fair is just under 8 weeks away. Keep your eye on the newsletter for donation drop-off information and ways to support this, our biggest church fundraiser. This week, our church programming includes our Thursday night young adult online group with Reverend Laura and our men's online group on Saturday morning. Additionally, Katie will host one last coffee and conversation at Cafe Nero in Reading Center this Friday, August 26th from 10 to 11:30 a.m. Next Sunday, August 28th, Katie will lead her final service with us, and we hope that you'll join us for that, as well as a special farewell social hour. Following our service today, those in person with us are invited to grab a cool beverage and circle around with Katie and friends to share our joys and our sorrows, offering one another thoughts on today's theme and deepening our connections to one another. Our online friends are encouraged to stay posted on more upcoming opportunities for connection that will return this fall. Thank you for being a vital part of our congregational life.
I have one last reading for us, and I went ahead and I put it in the order of service if you would like to participate as a unison reading. And it's Commitment by Dorothy Day. And she was a Catholic activist and justice worker in the last century, and she's been very influential on me. People say, "What is the sense of our small effort?" They cannot see that we must lay one brick at a time, take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and deeds is like that. No one has a right to sit down and feel hopeless. There's too much work to do. And our closing hymn is Hail the Glorious Golden City, And it's number 140 if you'd like to look at it in the hymnal. Otherwise, the words are in the order of service. Please take whatever position feels good to you for singing, be that standing, sitting, whatever works for you. Number 140, Hail the Glorious Golden City.
Hail the glorious golden city, pictured by the seers of old. Everlasting light shines o'er it, wondrous things of it are told. Wise and righteous men and women dwell within its gleaming wall. All His names, all His orders, justice reigns supreme o'er all. We are rivers of that city, all our joys and all our groans, help to rear its shining ramparts. All our lives are building stones, ever humble or exalted, all are called to testify. All must stayed alive together, forward from sublime design. And the world that we have filled, walk with pleading hands. All which will not perish with our years. It will live and shine transfigured, all in final ride of God. It will pass into the centers of the city of the light.
Please join me in extinguishing our chalice, and those words are in the order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts. As we prepare to depart, we give voice to these hopes. May we know ourselves bound in community even while we are apart. May a passion for justice burn in our lives. May we carry the light of compassion in our hearts and in our every interaction. May we be whole in our devotion to truth and always carry the lamp of peace before us. Blessed be and go in peace.